What is up, you guys? It's Fallout What If here, and today I'm doing this video. It is going to be what if Broken Deku, technically, because all the crap that's gonna happen. What if he was from the Dying Light 2 universe? Then he came to the MHA universe. Now, for those who know about Dying Light 2. Really not too much of an explanation, but for those who don't know it is a technically zombie parkour RPG game where you, the protagonist, have to find your sister. You become infected, and the mission is just to find your sister. There's more to it than that, but it's the basic premise of it. And I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't played it yet, but it's already 2023. It already came out a year ago, but at the same time, just don't want you guys to get spoiled. Now, the reason why I didn't do the video a couple of days ago was because of the fact that I had poison ivy on my face, primarily around my nose and my forehead, and actually some of it got into my eyes, to where I basically was blind for a little bit. And basically it was more of the fact that I had to go to work with my father, but because of how much time off I had, and the fact that I couldn't technically work out due to my surgery. But my surgery, it's actually gotten better. It's practically non-seeable, besides the big cut that it has. But either way, I'm good now. This is what if Deku was, from the Dying Light 2 universe, and here we go. Now, when the world of Dying Light 2 and the infected started happening, Izuku Midoriya was a part of this world, and it changed him for the worse and for the better. At this moment in time, Izuku is worried about his two friends, his big sister and his friend, who's basically who is technically French, a Frenchman. And Izuku is struggling right now as he's trying to figure out why is he in bonds. He sees that his hands are tied up with cuffs as well. He even sees metal plating on his body, almost as if he can't move, which he did try. And believe me, he did. But turns out that Izuku has gotten, the worst of it all. Well, not him per se, but he's wondering where is he at. He does see that there's a couple of armed guards, a doctor, and a girl right behind him. And Izuku looks up at them and says, "Hey, where am I at? Did I save old Villador? Did I even survive?" And this is when one of the guards says, "Who are you?" And Izuku says, "My name is Izuku. What are you guys doing? And why am I in cuffs? Why am I tied up like this?" And this is when one of the guards says, "You don't remember what you did to the doctors, to the guards? You're a freaking murderer." This is when the doctor the inventor, or the smart man from Island, also known as David Shield, talks to him and says, "Hey, Izuku, am I right?" And Izuku says, "Yes." And this is when he talks to Izuku and says, "Hey, I was wondering if you remembered anything." And Izuku starts looking around and he sees lights. And then afterwards, he saw his friend. More than that, he saw his big sis. He tried grabbing her. He tried picking her up and jumping from far places, but then afterwards, he became a little fuzzy. This is when the man looks at his friend and says, well, you got some of it right, but you got some of it also wrong. Or, not wrong, it isn't wrong per se, but you're leaving out some big details here. And Izuku says, what are you talking about? This is when they show him a recording. The camera shows that Izuku was basically brought here via this weird circular thing. And Izuku sees that he was pulled out, but fire just shot out into the... Well, it shot out into the freaking... What is the word? It shot out of the portal. And it caused Izuku to fly fast into the wall, making it to where Izuku was just lying there for a couple of minutes. But it showed the man who had a weird ability, and Izuku sees that he just pulled him from this thing. And Izuku starts to remember that the facility did not have anything like this. He's wondering what's going on. Why is he so angry at them? And this is when he starts to see the camera. Primarily, he sees himself. He starts breathing heavily, making these gasps for air, almost as if his mind was just breaking on itself. And he just gets up and just starts seeing everybody and just runs up to the first guy and just starts ripping him, tearing him limb from limb, chewing out one of his freaking eyes, and just starts to attack person after person until somebody with a gas quirk starts to just shoot it at just to start, letting the gas release, causing it to where Izuku was just starting to pass out, sedating him. The man right there says that it is one of his most lethalest sedating gas out there. So much so that even an elephant feels like it's gonna pass out. But Izuku just tells him that I didn't know that I could do that. And this is when David says, I don't know what to say. This is the first time that I see somebody become this feral. Is that a quirk of yours? And Izuku says, what's a quirk? And the doctor says, you're telling me you've never had a quirk before? And Izuku says, no, I don't know what that is. I'm sorry, but I'm guessing I'm not from, this is not Old Villador. And David says, correct. This is Island. Izuku looks at him and says, Island? That's a weird name. And David says, oh, well, it's nothing really, but right now we're just wondering, who are you? And Izuku says, well, one, I just got here. So really, if anything, I don't know who the heck just brought me here. And what was that device that you used to pull me out? It looked like some kind of machine, or there wasn't any machine. It just popped out. This is when one of the doctors says that was his name was Ferguson. He was a doctor here, but he had the ability to grab things either from faraway places to continents. Heck, he even found out that he can either make it to where his quirk can grab things from different dimensions. And technically, because of him, you're here. So if I'm being honest, you can't go back to wherever you came from. And Izuku just starts getting more mad and just tells him, put me back in Old Villador. I have to save them. And Izuku just starts to realize that, what is a dimension? And this is when they look at him and says, you weren't in this reality. You were in a different reality. You see, there's different dimensions, meaning that there's different Earths. So the Earth you came from is your Earth, but this Earth and the Earth you came from are different. And Izuku says, I'm really not following. I'm sorry, but I think this is old world tech at play here. And this is when they look at him and says, this is not actually old world tech. This is our DNA enhanced over a couple of centuries ago. Due to the first person that had this, one of the child being of light. And Izuku looks at them and says, wait, somebody can just look like a light? And he says, is it like a UV ray bar? Or is it kind of like my flashlight? And Izuku says, wait a minute, where's my gear at? Where are my clothes at? What the hell did you do to me? And this is when they just say, hey, we just only put them in a nice secure box. And Izuku says, I don't feel any clothes, though. You stripped me naked, you perverts. And they say, okay, Izuku, let's calm down. And he says, you freaking just... he gives up in defeat, just saying, can I at least be released out of my shackles? And the guard says, no can do. We're not going to let some freaking villain just destroy another member of our facility. And David says, calm down. He doesn't even know what he did. And the guard says, yeah, I call BS on that. This is when Izuku looks at him and says, what is your name? And he says, Torres. My name is Ryan Torres. I'm from the States. Actually, this guy and me are kind of close. So, in reality, I'm not going to let you just kill him or his kid. And Izuku says, so, wait a minute. You brought me here from this dimension. All of a sudden, you guys basically found out that I'm technically part volatile now. And because it was your abilities that did this to me, that brought me here, now you're upset that something bad happened. And he starts laughing at Ryan, the guard. And he says, look, I don't care who you are, but this is technically your faults. This is all your faults. You don't get to just get mad at me just because I can turn and automatically just look at me as I'm the bad guy. Had you guys just had the decency to just mind your own business and not grab things from different places, maybe your doctors, maybe your friends, heck, even your freaking coworkers, they would have all been okay. But you decided to just bring me here. So who the hell are you to just get mad at me? This is when the guard just basically just headbutts him with a gun and says, I'm not taking disrespect from this child. This monster right here. And Izuku says that if I really wanted to, I would get mad and then turn. But I'm not, because I'm trying to be reasonable here. And this is when Shield just backs him up and says, hey Ryan, don't worry about this. I got this. We will release him. But Izuku looks at him. Wait a minute, you're gonna release me just like that? And David says, well, technically you're not in any other, you're in Island, which is not actually viewed for the public all the time. But since now you're here, you're technically gonna be stuck here unless we, find somebody else with a different portal quirk. You're gonna be here for a very long time. And Izuku says that it wouldn't matter if I'm here or if I was never gonna come back. My other world died. And this is when Izuku says, looking at all of you guys all look clean. You all look pretty. And they look at themselves and says, pretty. And Izuku says, you guys don't look like you've suffered the way I've suffered. David says, tell me, Izuku, what happened in your world? And Izuku gives him a short rundown story about the Haran virus. He tells him that this weird disease came upon them and they all started to turn. Afterwards, it wasn't just in Haran. It started happening in different parts of the world. Izuku tells them that because of them banning assault weapons, people started dying more and more, not only to the infected, but to the government. Sorry, not only by the infected, but by the people, the government, their soldiers. Heck, if so far, so forth, you can even say that the peacekeepers were also doing it too. And he says the peacekeepers. And Izuku says, don't let the name fool you. To be honest, they're more like the Peace Rebellion. People that are, how should I say it? They are the... I don't know too much. If I'm being truthful to y'all, I don't know too much about the old world. And he says, I'm sorry. And David tells him, what is this old world you speak of? And Taku looks at him and says, the old world was beautiful at one point, I'm guessing. It doesn't look clean at all. Every street had at least a bunch of infected. There would be guts and blood on the floors. Heck, even on the walls. Buildings will creak, and sometimes, if you're not that lucky, you could fall down in high places. The buildings were sometimes, it almost looked like they crumbled. Not every structure was okay, but most of them at least had a chance to be fixed upon. That is, if you don't fight the infected. That's only if the infected weren't there. Which, if I'm being honest, you don't want to fight them. This is when David says, was that only in that place? And Izuku says, no, as I said before, infected started going everywhere. As far as my big brother told me, there's only a few places left. 3 settlements in London. Heck, 5 in Russia. 3 in... What was that place at? 3 in Mexico. 2 in Africa, which is startling. And this is when he says, why is that startling? And Izuku says, well, we heard about the Howlers, and they're not fun at all to deal with. Howlers? What is that? This is when Ryan starts chirping in. And he says, I'll explain all the infected to you all soon. But, give me a second here. Alright. Sorry about that, people. But Izuku just tells him that in the end, there's not too many places that you can call home. Some of those settlements are, well, okay. You can live there peacefully. You can do your part in the community. And, well, there are some places that are a little bit more... Let's say that they're not the best places to be at. And David says, really, how come? And Izuku says, well, besides the fact that if you go into one of the more, let's say, not good settlements, if you're able-bodied, you're basically in their ranks, meaning you fight or you're cannon fodder for the infected. Heck, and once you die, they can sometimes just throw you there, strip you of everything, and all you are in the very end is just going to be another meal. And that's if you're lucky. And this is when David says, what happens if it doesn't happen like that? You become infected. And depending on how long you be in the sun. If you're in the sun, you just become another normal infected. But if you stay in night for more and more and more and more time, you become a volatile. And he says, a volatile? Jeez, too many questions there. And David says, I'm sorry, man. But it's just, I get you. I get you. I'm this weird anomaly. And there's so many questions that have to be, that's asked. But I'm wondering, how's the infected on your spot, at your places? Where are your settlements at? And this is when Izuku just hears him say that there's no infected around here. There's never been an infected around here. And Izuku just looks at him, tries to see whether he's lying or not. And he says, so how come it happened with us? And Izuku just he tells him the truth. I never thought that would be the day that the infected would lose. And he says, it's 2023. Well, anything's possible with our old world technology. And he says, we're not in 2023. Remember, we're a couple of centuries older than you. Younger, technically. You're the older one. And Izuku just looks at him with, shocked eyes and tells him that can't be true. And David looks at him and says, yeah, it is. We are from 2378. And Izuku just loses it and says, I'm in the future now? And David says, technically you're from an alternate world close by ours, meaning that the timelines can either be different, or when he grabbed you, only you were young. It's scary to think that maybe your other world didn't, or it probably is old Villador. And Izuku just starts saying that, so in the end, if I go back, there probably wouldn't be old Villador or their people anymore. David says, this must be a lot to take in. And Izuku says, yeah, being from a new wacky world where people have these weird abilities, their technology's still working, heck, they're not even infected. That's a shocker to me. Won't lie, I'm jealous. And David says, so what did you used to do? And he explains that, I was a night runner. Night runner? Yeah. Maybe I could show you guys if you guys have a night runner course. And David says, we don't have a course, but we do have facilities that pertain to people with enhanced physical quirks, such as running, jumping, sprinting, or technically running and sprinting. My bad, guys. Fighting, stealth, flying. And Izuku says, well, I can't fly, but I do have my paraglider. And David says, well, I guess we can do something about that. Now, Izuku gets into a course, and David says, here, let me at least untie this out of you. And Izuku just starts getting, well, kind of worked out on this. And Izuku says, "What's the time limit for this?" David says, "Well, as far as we know, it's four. What is the time here? This is when one of the doctors says, "Oh, 4:38. Oh, so it's 4 minutes and 38 seconds, Izuku. I usually stay here, and so I'm sorry that, have to ask other people." And Izuku says, "No, don't worry. You guys are technically a community. If anything, it's kind of better when you ask other people, because at least you have, well, the ability to be nice and not even be a douchebag like somebody I know." And this is when Ryan says, "You're still talking crap." And Izuku says, "Not you per se, but you aren't. You technically are a viable option." With Ryan scoffing at the notion of it, Izuku says 4:38. And this is when Izuku just gets ready. And 3, 2, 1, Izuku just starts running through the distance, going over cars, over other buildings, and starts just swooping in, grabbing the what is it called? He grabs these little poles, and these poles are basically like these bright pens, I should say. And Izuku just grabs them, starts running on the walls, jumping over several feet, which technically can break a couple of records if they look at it closely. Izuku sliding down, jumping very high up in the air. And not only that, going through, scaling the walls, as if this guy had a climbing quirk. Almost, and they actually ask him, well, they actually ask themselves, does he have a enhanced physicality quirk or something? And David says that this is amazing. He's at 2015, and he's on, as far as we know, he looks to be the same as Melissa's age. Wow, this kid is amazing. And to do it so easily. And Izuku looks around, and he finds out the last pen. He jumps down 3 stories and actually just rolls it off as if there was nothing bothering him. Heck, the moment he rolled off, he jumped high up in the air again, which it wasn't going to be 3 feet, because, well, he's not who he is just yet. But so Izuku is just, well, he grabbed the last pen, and in 2 minutes and 21 seconds, he completed the course under half the time, below half time, if I'm being, if I'm thinking. And this is when Izuku just looks around and he says, "So, does that answer your question?" And, well, Izuku is, well, passed. David is impressed by it, and actually is thinking to himself, what if we get it to where Izuku is, how should I say it? What if we get to where Izuku is a member of High Island? But he realizes that there's probably something else he can do. What if he talks with All Might and actually tells him what was going on? And their new friend, Izuku. David has a good idea about this, a strong feeling about this. And he says, Melissa, how would you like to go to the UA, well, the UA college? And Melissa says, I would actually be happy to show my adventures to the world and show keep in the shield spirit. And David's like, great, great, great. Because I'm going to bring somebody with you. And this is when Melissa says, Dad, I don't need a bodyguard. I want to do things on my own. And Izuku says, not Izuku. David says, have I said David? I meant David when he's talking to Melissa. Sorry. David tells her that, no, it's not going to be a bodyguard. It's going to be this kid. And Melissa is just shocked and says, Izuku? Okay. Yeah, but why him? And David says, this kid could be a good hero. Heck, seeing his memories. And David tells him that he saw very harsh things happen to this kid. But throughout this whole time, he was always kind. Yeah, sure, he was a little rough around the edges. And sure, that weird state that he was in was there. But it's a gamble. But he thinks he could do it. David says that Izuku could probably have the capabilities to one day be the successor to All Might's legacy. And Melissa says, oh, Uncle All Might? Well, if that's what you feel, I think I will do it. You know what? Scratch that. I will do it, Dad. And David says, thank you, dear. Hang on a second. Sorry. Okay, so David talks to Izuku and says, hey, Izuku, I know we just met, but how would you like it if I was to tell you that you can go to a school, you can train your body, you can train your mind, you can train your abilities, and well, you can also train your quirk. And Izuku says, quirk? Hey, mister, you do know that we've already discussed this. I don't have a quirk. David says, at first, yes. We almost believed you. And we're not saying you lied. But during the time you did get injured when we pulled you into this world, we saw that you were bleeding immensely from one of your sides after we sedated you. We decided to try to put, our blood in, technically, transfer some blood into your system. We almost forgot about the fact that our blood and our DNA might not actually be good for you. But a man by the name of Kiko has the ability to breathe fire out of his mouth. And it is a quirk. Kiko is he is a scientist. And actually is the one that invents, how should I say it? He's the one that technically helped invent the quirk, he was the one that invented the device to help out All Might. That was supposed to help out All Might in his, All Might, still be a hero. But after that whole incident happened, he had to, well, donate some blood due to the fact that his blood and Izuku's blood technically matched. So, when that happened, Izuku technically technically the blood was transferring into Izuku, and Izuku actually just started spitting out a little bit of fire. It went into his body, and the ability to breathe fire hasn't shown just yet. But David did tell him that it could be there is a possibility that his blood, since it was somehow infected, technically transferred the quirk to its, well, DNA. Once it swapped signals, the quirk itself was, I guess, activated. David David is trying to explain it, and technically, give me a second here, people. Alright, so I think my phone kind of got buggy again. Hopefully I could save the rest of the video, but I think I could. So, anyway, Izuku finds out that he technically now has his quirk, and he tells him that it's pretty neat. Could have been useful for a lot of his fights. And David tells him, what fights have you been into? And he remembers that, was it that one called Carnage? And Izuku stops him saying, yeah, that was not one of my happier moments. And David says, that was the first time I'll explain it to you later, but for now, I'm probably just gonna train a little bit more. And this is when Shield says, I do have something that might pique your interest. Izuku says, yeah, sure, what do you have in mind? David tells him, well, the thing is that there is a robot that is that is supposed to be used for combat. Maybe if we can test your abilities. And Izuku says, sure, why not? Do you have any weapons on hand? And David says, would you prefer a firearm or a... Izuku stops him and says, if anything, I'd actually would just take a bow and a small little hatchet. This is when David says, yeah, sure, here, go ahead. And Izuku says, thank you. This is when he just tells him that, do you have a craftmaster around here? David says, craftmaster? Is like, do you have somebody that makes your stuff? And David says, no, and yes, we technically make the stuff around here. We make a lot of inventions. And Deku says, oh, alright, so do you have any, like, place that I could mod this little piece? And he says, oh, to mod it, yeah, sure, we have, like, a little facility to do that. It's like a couple of doors down. It's mostly meant for hero equipment. And Deku says, don't worry, I just need some... What is it? I need some oxidizers. Need a little bit of a battery right here, some wires, a couple of nuts and bolts, a few scraps. This is when they see this weird contraption. It's no longer just a small hatchet, which is basically a little axe. No, wait, is that what it is? It's a medium-sized axe. Yeah, I think so. It's a one-handed axe. not only is it changed, now there's like a something attached to it that looks like it could shock you, and then after that he sees like a little pipe with two two flames shooting out of it a little bit, and Izuku says, "All right, I don't have any infected poison arrows. I'll just take the regular arrows." And afterwards says, "Hold on here, guys. I need a little bit of this, some oxidizers, some pigments, and I think I need alcohol and some rags." This is when Deku is just doing, is just working on this thing, and they realize that this kid is like a little, he's a craftsman. He's technically crafty himself. Deku, on this hand, is just remembering like who taught him how to do this, and well, he remembers this old man, and he says there was a man that I knew. His name was Alberto. From my world, at least, he made stuff. He was a pretty funny dude. He usually had a stutter, and well, he was an old man, so afterwards he did this big project where unfortunately he met his doom. But his son got the position of being the new craftmaster. I'm glad that he's doing okay, at least. It's tough for a father to not be in his son's life anymore. And David says, "What happened to your parents, if you don't mind me asking?" Izuku says, "Well, technically, if you remembered in the memories, I was an experiment. My dad and my mom died. And if anything, either it was from the infected or the renegades. It could be the fact that there is also the fact of just dying in general. Maybe they lived, maybe they didn't. I wish I see them again, but probably that's just a fairy tale." And he just starts telling them that at least you have a daughter, and at least she has a father. And this is when David just says, "That's gotta hurt." Izuku just looks back at him and just says, "Yeah, it does. But I'm already finished with what I need." And this is when Izuku just gets ready for this, and David says, "I told my daughter I was going to send you to a school where you learn everything, and she's going to come with you." And Izuku says, "I really don't want to go due to the fact that I may not know too much about, whatever it is you guys probably know. I only knew some stuff from Old World books." And David says, "Well, it will be fun, and you'll make a lot of good friends. Some of the people are nice, and it's a good thing you have your quirk now." And Izuku says, "Now?" And this is when Izuku basically sees Melissa, and he says, "What, does she not have a quirk?" And Melissa says that, yeah, that's true. I don't have one. All I just have is my big brain and the inventions I make." And Izuku says that then it doesn't matter. And she looks at him, and this is when Izuku just starts still fixing up his gear. Tells her that it doesn't matter if you have the power or not. It's only if you're willing to actually just push ahead. If you don't want to do it, then that's your fault. But me, I want to make a change in this world. Sure, they're not mind they're not brain eaters, but there still should be some people that fight back for the people. And well, Melissa sees that Izuku is just saddened. He's just looking down. He remembers about what happened. He remembers what happened just not too long ago. And Melissa just sees that Izuku at least, doesn't look at her any different. But Izuku looks and says that he's ready for the combat. Well, David basically gives him a robot that's, well, it's not human looking, but it's big enough to where it looks like, there's a height advantage to this. And Izuku sees this as like, well, this is the first seeing a big old robot. That's pretty cool. And Izuku just gets ready and just hears that the fight is going to commence. 3, 2, 1. And Izuku is just basically running around this robot, jumping over it. Heck, even parrying some of the moves. This robot just attacks it, using these big swings at it. And David says that this is a little too much, don't you think? And Izuku just says, hey, don't worry about it. They look at Izuku, and Izuku says, look, I've been fighting big creatures for most of my life now. So it's not surprising that I can... Well, it shouldn't be that big of a surprise that I can handle it. And this is when the robot just swings its arms down and just slams on it. But Izuku went past its feet and just hits the robot. Well, it hits the middle part of the robot's back, and Izuku just sees that there's weird wiring around it, and Izuku just grabs it and just starts ripping it, causing one of the robot's arms to just stop working. But Izuku says that it's not finished yet. So Izuku just starts getting mad, and afterwards starts shooting it with arrows to the face, causing the robot to not see anymore. And Izuku just starts running towards it, jumps up with a super kick, which causes the robot to fall back, and after that, just start malfunctioning and just start moving around little by little. But Izuku just grabs it by the head and just yanks it as hard as he can. Sheesh. What the heck was that? It doesn't matter. Anyway. So, Izuku afterwards just finishes it. Well, finishes the fight, and David says that this kid is actually pretty cool. He can make his own weapons, he can make his own ammunition. Heck, he can even make his own moves up on the spot. And not only that, with his new quirk that's secretly hidden for now. David says that this kid is going to actually be one. He's going to be one. What's the word? He's going to be somebody that the world's is gonna yet to see. I don't know how that phrase goes. This world is going to see how somebody who was once who from a different world, how he's gonna fare against everybody else. But anyway, hopefully you guys liked it, and yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't make it any better. This is something I thought would be good for the story, but You guys in the end are gonna be watching it, so I hope you guys. I hope it did some justice for y'all. But anyway, like I always said before, like, comment, do subscribe to the channel here, people. This has been the Fallout with a Fear. Bye.